This lesson is about pairs of angles. Okay, so everything that we talk about in this lesson today is going to be about two angles that are going to be paired together for one reason or another. And it's mostly vocabulary that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to introduce five different pairs of angles, and we're going to talk about what they look like and different ways that you might see them and how you describe them. So we're going to be drawing some angles just like yesterday. The first kind, we'll go ahead and draw an angle here. And I'm going to put a ray coming out of the middle of it. It's not an angle bisector, it's just a ray that's in the middle of the angle somewhere, inside the angle. On the interior is the word we should be using. So I'm going to label this. This will be A. Our vertex down here will be B. C over here. And D is on the interior. So the two angles we have here, angle ABD, so angle ABD, and angle DBC are adjacent angles. Okay, so that's the first one, first angle pair that we're going to learn about, adjacent angles. Now, in my picture over here of my adjacent angles, there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Okay, this is a side that both angles share. So angle ABD and angle DBC both share this ray, and this is called the common side. If you've been making your vocabulary flashcards like you should, then you will have already written something about adjacent angles, and common side is part of the definition. This that you know is the vertex is called a common vertex. Okay, and that just means that both angles share that vertex. And when you look at your flashcard about adjacent angles, it should say something on adjacent angles on one side, and on the other side it should say something about two angles that share a common vertex and a common side. That's what adjacent angles are. Now, we'll do a couple of examples. So I'm going to make some examples here of what adjacent angles might look like when you're doing a problem or you're looking at something. So you might see them like this. Okay, again, these aren't, I won't penalize you for your drawing, so cut me a little slack on mine. Alright, so there is one way you might see adjacent angles. So this would be angle 1, angle 2. And you would say that angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent angles. Okay, another way that you might see adjacent angles is like this. Okay, it looks kind of like we have two right angles next to each other, but we don't know if they're right angles or not, but this could be angle 3 and angle 4. This is two angles. In both pictures here we have two angles that have a common vertex, and a common side. And that's what makes them adjacent angles. Now I'm going to draw you a couple of pictures over here that are not adjacent. Okay? And the only reason I'm doing this is because people always want to say that these are adjacent. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple of quick examples. Here's the first one. All right, so that could be angle 5 and angle 6. Now, these two angles do share a common side right here, but they don't have the common vertex. So these are not adjacent angles. Another thing that you're going to see be like this. You'll see a lot of these two. This would be angle 7 and angle 8. Okay, they don't share a common side, they don't have a common vertex, so they're not adjacent angles. One more type that people often make mistakes with is a picture like this. You see lots and lots of pictures in this class, lots of angles, and you want to be able to tell what's what. So I'm going to go back to 1 and 2 here, because I'm already up to 8 and I don't want to start doing big numbers. So this will be angle 1, this will be angle 2, and we're not going to be interested in this angle at all right now. Angle 1 and angle 2 here have a common vertex. That is true. But they do not share a common side. So angle 1 and angle 2 are not adjacent angles. Okay? It's a little hard at first to get it down, but just remember adjacent angles, common vertex, common side. Okay, the next type of angle that we're going to look at, I'm going to separate all this here. Okay, to do our next angle pair, we're going to start with a horizontal line, and we're going to add a diagonal line off of it like this. Go ahead and add our arrows, and then I'm going to put my points on there. So this will be point W, point X, point Y, and then up at the top, point Z. Now, if you'll notice, just like up here with the adjacent angles, these two angles, this pair of angles, have a common side, and they have a common vertex. Okay, so that is exactly like this, adjacent angles. And in fact, these two angles are adjacent angles. But our next angle pair is going to have a little more detail to it than just adjacent angles. They're going to be adjacent angles, but they're adjacent angles whose whose non-common sides, so adjacent angles whose non-common sides, that's these two right here, this is the common side, these are the non-common sides, form opposite rays. That is a fancy way of saying they're going to be adjacent angles that make a line. Okay, this right here, WY, is a line. Okay, so what we would say here is that angle WXZ and angle ZXY form a linear pair. Okay? Linear means line, so they make a line here. Pair means two, there's two of them. A couple of quick examples. Okay, some examples of some linear pairs, ways you might see them. First one is, obviously what you just saw there. You might also see them vertically like this. Okay, it's a linear pair. You can have an angle 1 and an angle 2, and they make, I know this isn't the right color, but you get the idea. Okay, right here they make a line. They form this line when these two angles come together here. Okay, another way you might see them. This will be a little more complicated, but not too bad. You'll be able to handle it. It's like this. Okay, so I'll put my arrows on here, make it a better picture. And then we'll have angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Now if you just look at this red line right here, you can see that angle 1 and angle 2 have a common vertex. So angle 1 right here, angle 2 right here, common vertex and a common side, and they form this line here. So angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. Well, angle 2 and angle 3 do it, angle 3 and angle 4 do it, and then angle 1 and angle 4 also do it. So there's a lot of linear pairs in this picture. So just be aware that you're not always going to see just a line like this and then a little thing coming off. You're going to have to kind of look for these in these problems we do. All right, the next kind, actually the next two pairs, you should be more than familiar with. Okay, you should have done this before. I'm hoping that everybody's going to be comfortable with this, so I'm going to do it a little bit differently. The first kind is complementary. Okay, that says complementary. And the second one, hopefully you'll remember, is supplementary. Okay, complementary angles are two angles. So remember my angle symbol from yesterday? When you make an angle symbol and you put a little s inside it, that means angles. So complementary angles are two angles whose measures add up to what? Let's see if you remember. 90 degrees. Okay. Supplementary angles, you should remember, are two angles whose measures add up to 180 degrees. Now you might remember from wherever you learned this originally, one way people remember it is that in the alphabet, C comes before S and 90 comes before 180. Another way that people remember it is the C can be turned into a 9, so here's 9D with the C and the O, and that the S can be turned into an 8 for 180. So whatever makes you remember it, but believe me when I tell you, this is something that you're going to have to memorize, and you pretty much need to have it memorized by tomorrow. So whatever you have to do to get this in your head. Complementary, 90, supplementary, 180. A couple of examples of how you might see this kind of thing. Okay, you might have a couple of angles like this. And just real quick inside here, you might see that this one is 40 degrees. And if I told you they're complementary, that means this one has to be how much? 50 degrees, okay? And then we know that 40 plus 50 equals 90. So angle A, and angle B are complementary. Okay, we'll come over here to supplementary. Make an angle. It won't always be as obvious as this one is, but the idea here is that if I took these two angles and put them together, they would make a line across the bottom. When you know that the measurement of a straight angle, which is what a line makes, is 180. So I have two angles that are supplementary. Maybe this one is 120 degrees. This one is, not 160 degrees. This one is 60 degrees. Okay, so this would be angle X and angle Y. So we'd say that angle X and angle Y are supplementary. Angle X and angle Y are supplementary. Okay, we're going to elaborate more on both of these in class, but the big key is complementary, 90 degrees, 180, or supplementary, 180 degrees. All right, the last thing that we're going to do, told you we're going to do 5 things, we're going to do 5 angle pairs. The last one is called, and this is probably, I would say, the most important one. It's one of the ones that comes up the most often, and it's just a nice one to be able to use in a lot of the things that we're going to do in this class. Vertical angles. Okay, vertical angles. I'm going to draw a picture of them real quick. Okay, vertical angles are the easiest to draw. So there are some vertical angles. We'll get more into it here in a second. Just put our arrows on the end. And we're going to number these angles all the way around. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now earlier we had a picture that looked like this when we were talking about a linear pair, like angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. That's true, they do. But now we're talking about vertical angles. And vertical angles are 2 non-adjacent, that's the most important thing to remember, 2 non-adjacent angles formed by intersecting lines. Now, I know my handwriting's not great here, but you should already have a flashcard that says exactly this. So if this is the first time you're seeing or hearing this, you're definitely behind with what we're doing in class. Okay, vertical angles are 2 non-adjacent angles formed by intersecting lines. So that's real easy. If somebody tells you to make vertical angles, make 2 lines. Okay, that's all you have to do. Formed by intersecting 2 lines. Now, when we look at the picture over here, let's find 2 non-adjacent angles. So I'll start with angle 1. Okay, angle 1 is here. Now, angle 2 is adjacent to it. Angle 4 is also adjacent to it. So angle 1 is a vertical angle with angle 3. And also by that same token, angle 2 is a vertical angle with angle 4. So what we write, or how we identify these, is that angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, and separately, but just as important, angle 2 and angle 4 are also vertical angles. Okay, this is something you just need to, however you memorize, it's how you need to memorize it. Some people like to think that here's angle 2 and angle 4, that they make a kind of like a V pointing at each other. It'd probably be more clear if I used a different color. They like to think that, so this purple V and this green V are pointing at each other, so they're vertical, because vertical starts with a V. However you remember it is great, but you need to know it, and you need to know it pretty soon. It's not something that you can 3 months from now think, man, I really need to learn that vertical angle stuff. You'll probably already have been moved out of the class by that point. So vertical angles, you got to know it. You got to be able to look at them and identify them. They're just across from each other. They're not adjacent. That's it for today. Remember, linear pair, adjacent angles, complementary angles, supplementary angles, vertical angles. Be able to identify them and be able to describe them. That's it.